Ralph Hasenhüttl finally nicking his first win for this brand new Premier League season. A lot of weight and pressure lifted off Hasenhüttl's shoulders, but a lot going on Brendan Rodgers. Of all the three matches that we just witnessed earlier, gents, Brendan Rodgers, Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard, who's under the most pressure right now? Alan?
I would have thought, I would have thought Brendan, because I think the Leicester fans are a little bit concerned about what's going on at their club. It looks like Fofana could go to Chelsea in the coming weeks. There's lots of talk about Maddison, you know, and they've not really brought anybody in. So what is going on at Leicester at the moment? I think the Leicester, out of all the fans, the Everton fans, the Villa fans, it's the Leicester fans that I think are a little bit more concerned.
That could be one reason why actually Brendan Rodgers isn't quite under so much pressure. Oh, right. Because, possibly, because he hasn't been able to bring players in. And I'm sure, like all managers, he wants to strengthen them. Whereas if you look at, say, the situation at Aston Villa with Steven Gerrard, they've spent pretty big. They brought a lot of players in. But again, 3 games in, under pressure.
Yeah,
you know.
That's the Premier League these days. That's modern football for you, Gary.
I understand that. I understand that. But I still think it's fundamentally wrong. You know, for me, you know, judging.
But Leicester City's form dates back to from last season as well. They haven't been able to pick that
Which is why Brendan Rodgers wanted to bring players in, and he hasn't been able to bring players in. So why hasn't he been able to bring players in?
That's what I'm saying, Guy. I think the Villa fans to say we've got a good enough side to turn this around. I think Everton are probably saying we've got a good enough team to turn this around. I don't know if the Leicester fans are saying that. Schmeichel going, you know, and it looks, you know, people sniffing around Vardy apparently, Maddison and Tielemans. Yeah. You know, it's not a happy camp, I don't think.
It seems like there's a lot of sympathy for Frank Lampard, though. I mean, he didn't go into, sympathies to him, really, because he's gone into Everton with so many issues there. He has to do with FFP, and he's taken over when they were in a very, very dire situation, managed to keep them up. It's not an easy job for Frank, but, I mean, I'm sure you kept in touch with him, Jody. Is he coping okay?
Yeah, I mean, I know that he would like a striker. I know that. Yeah, the whole thing for him was managing to keep them up and then try and build from there. But what you have seen is, although they've got Onana through the door, the midfielder, which I know he's really excited about, but they are lacking up top. The fact that they've started these games with 3 effective wide players in the front 3 positions. At Chelsea, they had opportunities where they could have punished Chelsea, and the fact that they were playing, I think it was Anthony Gordon in the 9 that time, and they haven't managed to do that. The fact that they go to Forest and again they're taking shots from distance, they're not really creating a lot up top. I think for them to be further away from the relegation battles, they're going to have to get someone through the door who is a renowned goalscorer with not sure how long Calvert-Lewin's going to be out. I think that people realise that, yeah, he's making some changes and he's brought some character in with Tarkowski and Connor Cody. He wants characters through the door because he felt they was lacking that. But ultimately, they're going to need someone in that team that scores goals because they're really lacking that at the high end of the pitch.
Did he bring Dele Alli in last season? Because Dele's been a disaster for them, hasn't he, really? He just hasn't worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously when he first goes in there and he knows that there's days till the transfer window finishes, I know that he was a player that Lamps loved a few years ago and was hoping, OK, then if we can revitalise his career like all of us was 4 or 5 years ago, talking about how good Dele Alli was. He obviously hasn't quite done it because Frank hasn't played him enough. So, listen, at the end of the day, I think, like I said, Frank's going to need some goals in that team if he wants to push further away from the relegation zone.
One of the biggest criticism of Frank Lampard is the fact that he doesn't really have a lot of experience at the bottom half of the table, so close to the bottom. It is very different, isn't it? But you know Frank personally, so you know he has that mental strength. But through your own experience as well, when you move from Chelsea to Leeds, it's a completely different battle altogether.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, I think that the way that he is as a person, he got the most out of himself as a player because he was so mentally strong and mentally driven. It's exactly the same as a manager. It wouldn't matter if he was managing a team in another country, or in mid-table or at the bottom. The pressure is what he puts on himself. All that you would like as a manager, and I'm sure these 2 guys will tell you, is that you'd like a little bit of support in areas where you feel that you need to be able to strengthen. Now, whether there's restraints involving financial fair play, I'm not sure, but I know that when you're new in at a club or you want to build and you identify where you think that you're maybe weak, not being able to do that can sometimes hinder you going forward. So, I mean, what do you...
I think they are in trouble at Everton on the financial fair play, because if you look at the money since Moshiri's gone in there as the owner, they've spent absolute fortunes, haven't they? They sold Richarlison to Spurs, and that had to go through so that the figures were in last year's accounts, because, you know, to try to balance the books there. So that, you know, I think Everton do have some financial problems, and of course that then becomes a restriction.
Yeah. And I think going back to Villa, Steven Gerrard, I think he's heavily invested in the transfer market. It's a demanding crowd as well, but I think because of who he is, I think he will be given time. You know, and I think the people in charge will give him time. I think, as I said, I'll go back to the club that I think, if we go another couple of months, will really be sort of looking over their shoulders. I think it will be Leicester.
We would like to see managers being given time anyway. Your perfect example is, we were joking about it earlier, but Mikel Arteta was being called for the sack after this amount of games last season. Arsenal stuck by him, backed him. OK, they narrowly missed out on Champions League, but he improved on the previous 2 seasons of finishing 8th. And then you go, OK, now where are they doing? They recruited well again in summer. They've stuck with Arteta, and at the moment they're sitting top of the league. So I think giving managers time is certainly something that people involved in football would call for continuously, I think.